On March 23rd, 2015, in Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California, Seth Rollins pulled off the Heist of the Century. Had the silly thing in reverse. Me, oh my, down on the retrospective bayou. This event is 10 years old. Now, we can look back on this event fondly, and we can think that there were some great goddamn moments. We can also look back with just absolute disdain and say, why were they pushing them? Why did they think this was a good idea? But does this event still hold up a decade later? Yes, a decade. We're all getting 1 foot closer to basically being either worm food or some kind of, I don't know, ash in the wind. We're all just ash in the wind. But before we're all ash in the wind, let's talk about this event. How good is it? How good was it? And how good will we see it many, many years from now when the Earth is spinning towards the sun and evaporating? I'm John Renton with the Retro Review, WWE WrestleMania 31 from Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. Yes, that's right. March 29th, 2015. The Heist of the Century, Taker versus Bray, and Daniel Bryan ended up becoming the Intercontinental Champion. It had such a lengthy reign of a little bit, not much, because... oh boy, I'll be talking about that. I do want to give you a little tease of a series that I came up with on the fly. Yes, that's right. I was recently rewatching Vincent Price's Fly. No, I actually wasn't. I was recently rewatching the Jeff Goldblum one. No, I wasn't. But I actually will be doing that for Horror Movie Month, aka October. I am going to do a bit of a deep dive into the history of WWE pay-per-views in the great state of California. From WrestleMania 2 all the way to basically WrestleMania going Hollywood. Once again, with WrestleMania 39. So yeah, speaking of which, let's talk about a couple of those events. Let's talk about the history of WrestleMania in the state of California. Obviously, WrestleMania 2, that was New York, Chicago, and LA. Now, they did have 14,500 people in the LA Sports Arena. Don't worry, the LA Memorial Sports Arena only hosted one WrestleMania. Only one. How dare you say otherwise. 250,000 buys, and really this is memorable for the featured matches. For better or worse, we had Mr. T and Roddy Piper in the boxing match. Roddy. We also had the British Bulldogs. We had Dynamite Kid taking the Nestea plunge and hurting his back, given how much of a piece of shit he was. Oh, you poor thing. You ended up confined to a wheelchair by doing something stupid and being a toxic individual. They took on the Dream Team, Bruce the Barber Beefcake, without his wife Betty the Barbeck Queefcake, as well as Greg Valentine, the human smiling machine. And then Hogan versus Bundy. Bundy, you big fat piece of... well, that's mean. Rest in peace, Bundy, but... Ernie Ladd, shrieking Ernie Ladd noises. Now, they would go back for WrestleMania 7. That would be just about 5 years later. And they were, once again, in the LA Memorial Sports Arena. They obviously did not have to move it out of, the giant Coliseum because clearly there were, there weren't security issues or whatever. There weren't anything like that. It was because of low ticket sales. Because honestly, WWE will do anything to spin their narrative. But they did have 400,000 pay-per-view buys. The Slaughter Hogan thing wasn't really lighting the world on fire. But to be perfectly honest, it was much better. The atmosphere in the LA Memorial Sports Arena was a ton better. Savage versus Warrior. Savage wanted to take time off to start a family. Him and Liz reunited. Must have had the chili dog with onions. Maybe her shoes are too tight. Bless Bobby Heenan. Bless Bobby Heenan. We had DiBiase versus Virgil. We can laugh now looking back on that, but they were, having a hot program there. And Virgil was actually pretty over, shockingly, for some reason. Even as a kid, I never exactly understood it, but you know what? I was caught in the fervor and the fever and the whatnot. The Hart Foundation against the Nasty Boys. It was the last tag team championship reign for the Hart Foundation, as well. Brett would go on his singles run to win the Intercontinental Championship, as I was about to say, stumbling over that, against Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam. And then we had Hogan versus Slaughter. There were other matches. There was the Texas Tornado versus Dino Bravo. Oh boy. Oh boy. Two guys that would die within a few weeks of each other, and like 2 years later. How eerie is that? So anyway, let's just talk about, well... they had, Royal Rumbles and fully loaded in your house. At WrestleMania 2000, that was in Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California. 19,776 fans. They had 824,000 pay-per-view buys for this shitty show. They had the Hardcore Battle Royal. And unfortunately, Crash Holly didn't leave the show with the hardcore title, but that was because of a botched count. A triangle ladder match for Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, and the Hardys unfortunately end up having to top themselves constantly, and I wonder why they all have difficulty walking now. Jericho versus Benoit versus Angle, the only time that Chris Benoit would come out on the winning end of a triple threat match. I guess technically June 2007 had a handicap match, and the referee wasn't there to signal for the bell. And also, we have The Rock with Vince in his corner, Linda in the corner of Mick Foley, Shane was in the corner of The Big Show, and Stephanie was in the corner of Triple H for the McMahon Every Corner Fatal 4-Way Elimination, well actually it was a 4-way elimination match for the WWE Championship. And oh boy, in hindsight, WrestleMania 2000 was not all that great. And then we go to WrestleMania 21. That was in the Staples Center. That was just over 20,000 fans. 1.09 million pay-per-view buys. Batista and John Cena winning their championships from Triple H as well as JBL. And that was a big goddamn moment. We had the first Money in the Bank ladder match. Christy Hemme, bless her heart, tried. She really goddamn tried. And against Trish Stratus. And we did have, some other great... We had Eddie versus Ray. We had some great moments. WrestleMania 21's an odd duck, though, because there were so many, cool parts to it, and there were, some moments that really do stick out. Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, I would argue, had stolen the whole damn weekend. And there were moments that really do stick out for greatness. I don't know. Something about WrestleMania 21... I don't think it's in the exact top 5 or maybe even top 10 best WrestleManias of all time. I'd have to look at the whole cards. Once again, because the narrative changes and all that. But WrestleMania 21, memorable for a variety of reasons, as well as the Piper's Pit, where you had Carlito and you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, and you had the Hall of Fame, people. You basically had, enough of a melting pot of good stuff that even with the bad stuff, it would, it was what it was. And, of course, WrestleMania 39. There was 22 in Chicago, 23 in Detroit. And then you had, you would go to Florida, you go back to Texas, you go to Phoenix, you go to Atlanta, you go to Florida again, you go to Jersey. Why would you want to go to Jersey? Nobody likes Jersey. Sorry, Kier, if you happen to be watching this. Actually, I've heard Jersey's very nice, despite the fact it's Jersey. And then we go to New Orleans, and then we would get to WrestleMania 31. And then actually we go Dallas, and then we go back to Florida. We would go back to New Orleans. We would go then to Jersey. We would go to the Performance Center for the pandemic. We would go to Tampa, Florida for WrestleMania 37. And then we would go for WrestleMania 38 back to Dallas. And then for WrestleMania 39, going Hollywood once again. You did have Cody versus Roman 1. You had Rhea versus Charlotte. In my opinion, was probably the show-stealing match of the weekend. And you had other stuff that really did work here. I mean, you had a lot. You had some good. I mean, yes, it was a 2-night WrestleMania. Theory versus Cena. More on Cena here in a bit. But WrestleMania 39 had its issues, but also did have its strengths. One of which was not Bork versus Edward James Olmos, but I digress. That being said, that's a brief history and a brief tease of what you will hear in regards to WWE's, pay-per-view history in California. But now we are going to start with this. I'm not going to break down the minutia of this particular event, but I will say that some parts of this event are better than I remember, and other parts are worse than I remember. So they had 67,000 fans, and they had 259,000 pay-per-view buys, even though they were on the award-winning WWE Network in full swing by this point. People were still buying it on pay-per-view. It was the Heist of the Century. The kickoff panel, remember when kickoffs actually used to, accomplish something? The kickoffs actually felt new and fresh, and then they just started overdoing them. Renee, Corey, Byron, and Booker. 3 out of those 4 are still there. Kind of weird. Remember Tom Phillips wanted to Facebook the shit out of somebody? Pre-show, so if you can track down the pre-show, good for you. I've seen enough clips and I remember it, well enough to know that it was what it was. You had Tyson Kidd and Cesaro. Wee-oo, wee-oo, wee-oo. Against Los Matadors, Primo and Epico, and a little midget shit. I don't really care if that's offensive, by the way. New Day basically just starting their, basically just a few months before really starting to get their groove against the Usos. So yeah, it was a 4-team tag title match. It was what it was. There really wasn't much of a chance for anybody to really do anything besides a little bit of their shit. And Tyson Kidd and Cesaro, were able to retain. So there you are. 30-man Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Really, this was memorable for Damien Sandow or Mizdow turning on Miz. You would have thought they would have given him the win. No. Big Show got the win. Everyone, Cesaro, I almost said Claudio, got the win at WrestleMania 30, and they didn't do anything with him because he was too Swiss. Good times! So, how has it been 10 years already since this event happened? Seemed like it went by in the blink of a thigh. Aloe Black ended up singing America the Beautiful. He's actually talented. Wake him up when he's all over, and she's gone and bent herself over. I don't think those are the lyrics. LL Cool J hypes us up. To think the man to start, popularize Mama Said Knock You Out would become a fairly well-accomplished actor. I guess well-accomplished. I guess when you're in Deepest Blues, this has like a shark's fin, as well as Halloween H2O, and one of the NCISs, I think NCIS LA. Credit to the man. He has managed to make one hell of a goddamn career. Commentary was Cole, Lawler, and JBL. Now, there were points where JBL wasn't too bad, and then there were points where JBL was insufferable, i.e. pretty much JBL most of his life. So, don't get me wrong, I could pick on Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler, at least at this point, still had a little bit left. But Eden Brandy Styles Rhodes was doing the ring announcing, along with Lillian, I believe. I think they were splitting it. That's where Brandy should have stayed, honestly, doing ring announcing, because who told her it was open ring announcing mic night, bitch? I'm going to have jokes for this review, by the way, in case you can't tell. And I apologize, by the way, if I seem a little bit, not necessarily under the weather, but just a little bit all over the place. I've been going through some stuff, but I wanted to get this review out and just have some fun. Don't worry, I'm good. Others are dealing with way worse. Don't worry, I'll be all right. So we have a 7-way ladder match. It's Daniel Bryan, the Yes Man, the man that was looking like a goat like crazy at this point. Wade Barrett in one of the last big pay-per-view matches he would have. He was a defending Intercontinental Champion at this point. Luke Harper, I'm sad now. Poor Luke Harper. It's scary that he would have passed away not even 6 years after this event. That's the scary thing. Dolph Ziggler is here to show the world. Cody Star Rhodes Dust. Yeah, when he was Stardust at this point. And what a stupid gimmick that was. I cannot imagine Cody was happy. I'm not in his head, thank God. But the man couldn't have been happy doing that. They really should have had Cody versus, Dustin in a big featured match on this Mania. It would have justified some of the killing of time that they had. You could have at least given them an 8 to 10 minute match. But hey, we got him a Double or Nothing. Even though Dustin arguably hasn't had a great match since, because the man pretty much bled buckets just to do that. Nevertheless, R-Truth, who's scared of heights, and Dean Ambrose. I wonder whatever happened to him. What happened? Oh, right. He started going all garbage because he forgot how to work. But yes, Dean Ambrose, the Lunatic Fringe, or as Derb once called him when he did some Photoshop, the Lunatic Fridge. Thanks, Derb. So yeah, 7-way IC title ladder match. What a difference 10 years makes. You have Ziggler and TNA. Daniel Bryan really shouldn't ever come back to wrestling again. He doesn't need to. He doesn't have anything to prove. And I don't think Wade's ever wrestling again. This is a car wreck, but the crowd was into it. Dean took a header through a ladder. There were some car crash moments. Ziggler was bumping his ass off. Wade was hitting bull hammers on everybody. Truth was doing some comedy with the ladder and being scared of heights. Luke Harper showing how athletic he was and how they really should have included him in the WWE Championship feud with Bray and Orton just 2 years later. The fact they didn't do that is very, very nauseating. But the crowd was into it. And it's still a match that holds up. The thing is at least with this, I think enough of the ladder spots and enough of the, falls off the ladder, they at least registered them. Unlike some, matches in both companies now, where they aren't registering them all that much, even if it looks like they practically got folded in half. So it looked like, Wade might retain. No, then it looked like Ziggler might go. I mean, I think we knew that certain people weren't going to win. Luke wasn't going to win, unfortunately. And Bryan did win. Unfortunately, Bryan would end up, I believe he feuded with Sheamus for a little bit, because Sheamus returned with the "you look stupid" hair and all that. The Mo Sheamus hawk. I don't know why they decided to do that. But Bryan got a big pop, and it was a cool moment. And unfortunately, it was like pretty much the last big moment that Bryan would have until he came back a couple years later. I was actually at his retirement when I believe it was February of the following year. Shockingly, the weather actually wasn't all that bad, despite the fact that it's February in Western Washington. But it was a cool match. It was definitely a hot way to start off the main show. And then Randy Orton and Seth Rollins with J&J Security, Jamie Noble, and Joey Mercury. Rollins was the Money in the Bank briefcase winner. And, Orton and him were in the Authority, and then Orton got ousted of the Authority, and my God, the Authority, dear God, the Authority was all over this goddamn show, and the Authority is one of the worst things that they did in the last 15 years, and I don't care, you can fight me in the goddamn comments. It made sense at first, but nobody got their comeuppance when they should have, and it led to bad television, and I'm willing to concede that Vince probably had most of the idea. But you can't tell me that Triple H wouldn't want to stroke his own ego and be on television like that. And Stephanie, who's not much better than her dad. Nevertheless, so this is pre-knee problems Rollins. This is before, I think, like 8 months later. No, maybe 7 months later, his knee would bend in a way that God never intended. And there we are. But he still, has battled through that stuff, and I'm glad that he still has a few years left in the ring. But the pace is good. Orton, this is when he was still able to move before he started suffering his back problems, even with the shoulder injuries he had before. The outside moonsault by Rollins, where he slammed his back into the goddamn announcer's table. Beautifully done. Good shit. Both guys ended up taking, J&J ended up taking a DDT. And then, Orton just keeps going for broke. Ends up hitting an RKO variation, but only a 2 count. Oh, shit. And then Seth ends up hitting a stomp at one point. Only gets a 2 count. And then the best RKO, and just one of the funniest goddamn moments. Back and forth, boom, 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 boom. They're doing some good stuff. Got the crowd rocking and rolling. And then Seth goes for another stomp. He gets launched in the air and RKO. And Randy's all fired up and everything. Shit, I gotta pin him. I don't know why that always makes me laugh. But it's so goddamn funny. It's so entertaining. And 1, 2, 3. And then Ronda Rousey. And I think that was Maria Shafir, but we still don't know her. They were at ringside. Don't worry. Ronda won't ever, try a career in wrestling. That'll end up fizzling out because she's kind of an idiot. It worked for a while. So, why did Sting get a weird drummer entrance straight out of the Great Muta playbook? I don't get it. If the Great Muta had come out with him, that would have actually been kind of cool. Now, Sting, for his one and only WrestleMania appearance, at least in a match, yeah, that was a choice. Triple H got his Terminator entrance. Arnold says it's time to play the game. And commentary kept taking shots at WCW. I want to believe, again, this is a Vince thing, but I really honestly believe that commentary wanted to throw their own jabs in. Lawler throwing his jabs in when he tried to go to WCW after leaving with his wife that ended up divorcing him just during the interim. Good job there, you idiot. And he wanted to go to WCW, but then they were going to shut down. Could you imagine Lawler in WCW? That would have just been wild. So, that being said, the commentary is kind of insufferable during the following match. Triple H versus Sting, no DQ match. But don't worry, folks. Don't worry. Because this match already was off the goddamn rails. Triple H was washed by this point. I mean, he was. Sting, bless him. I love Sting. He probably, I would imagine he probably got $1 million to $2 million just to do this stuff. And it was chump change for them. They had to chip off a good amount of money for him, but good God. Not that I expected these guys to be pulling off shit that they did in the 90s, but man, I mean, this was plodding even for these guys. There was constant amount of rest holds and stuff like that. And yes, Sting wasn't in prime cardio shape. Neither was Triple H, but oh boy, jeez. 19 minutes bell to bell. And I think there was maybe 5 minutes of action, if that. But then suddenly, Sting looks like he has the advantage. And then DX music hits. What do you mean DX music hits? By the way, this is well before AEW, so Billy Gunn was there in bright green sneakers. Unfortunately, Road Dogg was there. It's too bad that Brad Armstrong isn't here and Brian Armstrong isn't dead. But nevertheless, X-Pac was there. And then it looks like, oh no, Sting's fighting him off, but it looks like Sting's going to lose. And then suddenly the NWO shows up. Hogan, Nash, and Hall. Led by the same guy that basically said, that doesn't work for me, brother, and beat Sting clean at Starrcade 97 before they did a restart. And it didn't serve anybody any purpose. It was really goddamn bad, but Sting didn't have a tan. I mean, just god damn it. Like, just at the time this was stupid, and it's even dumber now. Because this was Sting's only WrestleMania match. Now, granted, maybe he wasn't going to stick around past WrestleMania 32 in any kind of wrestling capacity. I don't know. Had he not gotten his neck hurt? Who knows? But Jesus. And to think, they could have had Taker versus Sting and had Triple H versus someone. I mean, I don't know who the hell Triple H would have faced. But honestly, he didn't really need to be involved in a match at this point. He really didn't. I mean, I'm kind of surprised they wouldn't have had him against Orton. But then we wouldn't have gotten the cool RKO thing, and it's fine. Could have had Triple H versus Rollins versus Orton in a triple threat. But yeah, we get like bullshit. We get hulking up. We get Sting that obviously, after breaking the bat and seeing the hammer in two pieces, and you can see that Triple H has a piece of the hammer, the head of the hammer, and ends up hitting him, getting hit with it when he goes for a Stinger Splash because Sting is an idiot, and then gets covered 1, 2, 3. And in the respective factions, remember Sting was part of an NWO Wolfpack that Kevin Nash was part of, Hall was briefly part of, and Hogan was part of the NWO Elite. That was in 99. It's fine. It's fine. It's not. And then a handshake. Now, I do believe, by the way, that Triple H probably used a little bit of his ego. Just a little bit of his political, sway. And I think even Hall was quoted as saying, "You're not going to win, Stinger?" That's kind of dumb. And it is dumb. It was really, really goddamn stupid. Just one of the biggest blunders in WrestleMania history. One of the biggest. Just have Sting win. But no, we have to make it about the Monday Night Wars that were long since dead. Long since dead. Vince just didn't get over the fact that he, got beat for the first time in his life 83 weeks in a row. And then couldn't get everybody that he wanted because he didn't want to upset the pay schedule or, pay scale. There's a lot of things wrong with this whole goddamn thing. But then Maria Menounos is trying to interview Daniel Bryan, and, well, she's asking him how he feels being the Intercontinental Champion. Pat Patterson shows up, and fortunately, Pat Patterson is not in heaven. He is down there in hell. You can say what you want, but it's funny. Patterson, and then Piper shows up, and look at the clip of Piper, where he's talking about Pat Patterson not liking him very much. And yeah, he says that it wasn't one particular thing, but you never know. You never know. All those stories about Pat. Speaking of which, Roddy Piper is here, and it's just sad, I think, by August of 2015, he'd pass away. Like, that was really, really sad. Ricky Steamboat said the ladder match measured up to what him and Randy Savage did at WrestleMania 3. No, it didn't. I guess that brain bleed that you had, Ricky, fried your rational thought. And then Bret Hart shows up. Ric Flair shows up. And then Ron Simmons shows up. Oh, we can think of one word. Damn. I can't say it like he does. So there we are. Cool moment. They were doing the yes thing. And then Skylar Grey and Kid Ink did a performance. I remember Skylar Grey being attractive. That is about all I remember that I liked with this. Is Skylar Grey still making music? Did she make better music than this? So AJ Lee and Paige took on the Bella Twins. This was sometime after AJ Lee had been screwed out of the championship. AJ Lee was leaving the company. This was AJ Lee's last professional wrestling match. I believe she retired right after this. I don't believe she has wrestled even on an independent show. Whatever. It's fine. She's happy with it. Remember when Paige actually was bright-eyed and looked like she had a future in front of her and had a working neck and had, the first of like 18 faces? And no, I don't feel bad about saying that because I will never claim to be a GQ model. And I will obviously also say that I am one step away from having a mirror smash over my face and improving my looks. But Paige deserves every bit of ridicule that she gets because I used to love Paige. I don't anymore. And haven't for years because she burned that goddamn bridge and many people don't want to see her anymore. She's like that gif of that giraffe. Those giraffes doing the neck thing back and forth. Oh yeah, by the way, AJ Lee tapped out Nikki, I believe. Good job there. Good job with your championship. Hall of Fame class of 2015. Larry Zbyszko, the Bushwhackers, Medusa. I sadly called both Bushwhackers dead and one is still alive. Tatsumi Fujinami, Rikishi, and the Hall of, we have to induct somebody from the Samoan family. I'm sorry, but Rikishi, as good as he is he a Hall of Famer? No. Was he over for a time? Yes. So, Connor the Crusher winning the Warrior Award, which was bullshit. The Warrior Award, not Connor the Crusher. What was bullshit is that they thought that Ultimate Warrior, by the way, who wished that Bobby Heenan's cancer would consume him and everything. And they give the Warrior Award to a boy that passed away from cancer. I wonder what Warrior would have said to him. Oh, Ultimate Warrior died in front of his family. That's a shame. That's such a shame. I feel bad for the kids. I don't feel bad for Dana. She's just as bad as he is. But that being said, I just felt like, knocking down. So yeah, poor Connor the Crusher. And the people that wanted the goddamn father, that was terrible. But man, I was fine in that speech, and then the brother said, "I love you, Connor." It's like, ugh! Anyway, fuck the Ultimate Warrior. I'm glad he's dead. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger, no Hulk. Randy Savage, inducted by Hulk Hogan, for that friendship that they had years and years before, that was torched years and years before, because Hogan always thought he was better than Savage, but he never was. Kevin Nash, he got inducted, tore quad, and that was it. And then they made their appearance. Cool, all right. Tatsumi Fujinami on a WrestleMania stage, even at that point, is just wild. Rusev Machka makes his entrance on a tank, or in a tank. Big old Russian Bulgarian deal. Boy, hasn't exactly aged all that well, given the administration trying to befriend Russia and get in bed with Russia. We have problems over here. Speaking of problems, let's talk about Cena beating Rusev here. Now, don't get me wrong. It did lead us to the U.S. title open. That was cool. But Rusev never reached these heights again in WWE. I mean, think about it. He would feud with Roman. He'd have, he'd have matches where it looks like he'd win. He had the Rusev Day thing, but then it never worked. It never worked at all. I'm just going to get basically into like a little bit of this right here, but yeah, the crowd booed Cena to hell. Now, don't get me wrong. The action was good. Rusev was a beast. They traded submissions. They did some good stuff. There was the STF. After the acolyte. Damn it, Rusev. The diving headbutt for two was certainly something I didn't expect, the future Miro to make. This is the word of the Reamer. And Lana threw her shoe, honestly. But then we got the STF. Lana gets knocked off the apron, and then Rusev goes right into the AA, 1, 2, 3. And Rusev's U.S. title reign, that could have been so much better, went up in smoke. And Rusev is mad at Lana. We all are, because she tried to wrestle. Battle Royal recaps. It's 76,976 fans. No, it's 67,000, but you count everybody in the building. And currently, I don't know, napping outside the arena, I guess. Triple H and Stephanie are in the ring for an inordinate amount of time to kill time because we want the sun to start to set for the next match. Rock comes out to a pop. They're eating us up, all of it. He mentions, well, you know, Triple H, you don't want to rekindle this rivalry. Apparently you left your balls in Stamford, Connecticut. No one wanted to listen to Stephanie, because the fact is that Stephanie has always been a stupid twat that thinks that she's better than she actually is and deserves every bit of ridicule. The post 9/11 SmackDown comments will always ring in my head. She was old enough, she knew what she was saying, and that's an example that people tend to forget that proves that she's just like Vince. But you wouldn't be in a position of power if it wasn't for Vince's Johnson, is what Rock the Dwayne Johnson says. And then she slaps Rock, and Rock won't hit a woman, but Ronda Rousey will. And Ronda and I are friends, Stephanie says. And then tried to bow up at her because this is my ring. And then Ronda has that look on her face, and he says, that look means that she is about to, about 3 seconds away from snapping and just beating you up. And man, oh man, this is actually back when Ronda Rousey actually meant something, because Ronda Rousey was one very, very, intimidating person back then. Unfortunately, then she exposed her true colors when she ran away crying because she lost a fight. And then because somebody tried to shoot on her and she denied it happening. She's known for denying shootings. Recently she came out and said, I was wrong. Now you do it after all the damage is done. Brief skirmish, a sign of things to come. And don't get me wrong, Ronda Rousey, debut match, that tag match, teaming up with Kirk Angel against Triple H and Stephanie, was a ton better than it had any right to be. Bray makes his entrance with the creatures of the night and all that, or his own creatures of the night. Bray's ankle, apparently he twisted it. He was fucked. He was not in a good place. I do remember that. Taker makes his entrance as the sun is setting. Okay, I'm not going to get into the minutia of this because while they hit some good moves, it was kind of muted because Taker already lost at Mania. Had they had Bray beat Taker and end the streak at Mania 30, had this been Taker and Sting, it would have been better. Bray versus Triple H where Bray slays another beast. That would have been even better. But no, we couldn't have that. Taker was washed by this point. I know he would have a better match with Brock a little bit later on in the year, but he was still washed. The spider walk and the rise up, that was a cool moment. And Sister Abigail, boom, 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 breaking out the moves. The crowd was into it, don't get me wrong. But between Bray's ankle and Taker's, washed, physical nature, we ended with a tombstone. Roman went through the crowd. The crowd were having none of him. Bork made his entrance with a lot of pyro. This is Brock versus Roman, WWE Championship. Really what it is Brock dominating. Roman getting, every time Roman even tried to breathe on Brock, they were like, no, we don't want to deal with that. Boo! Suplex City, bitch, is where this came up. And, he destroyed him, beat him up and everything. Hammer blows, taking the gloves off. Brock's beating him up. Eventually, Brock does go into the post. He's bleeding. Roman hits multiple Superman punches, hits a spear, gets hit with the F5. Fuck you! Boom! Who's going to capitalize? And then suddenly, Rollins, his music hits in. He runs down to the ring. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. Many thought probably that Rollins was there to take the pin. So Roman didn't have to take the pin. And he's almost got Brock down. And then Brock gets him up for the F5. And Roman hits a spear. And then a stomp to Roman. 1, 2, 3. Big pop. My God, what an explosion. They went absolutely apeshit, as it were. And Seth Rollins is a new WWE champion. Gets the pyro, the heist of the century, and what a moment it was. Like, really, what a moment it was. This was actually really goddamn cool. And easily one of the top 10 WrestleMania moments ever. And probably the best in the last 10 years, at least close to it. That being said, let me know your thoughts on WrestleMania 31 in the comments, please. Did you like it at first and not like it now, or vice versa? Agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin, and I'll see you soon.